Everybody give it up for the crew from From.
Awkward, everybody.
That's how we do it.
That's how we do it at CBR. Yeah, they're not going to do that in Screen Rant, you guys.
We have leveled up.
They might have a fancy couch and everything, but they're not going to cheer for you guys. This is like one of those shows that, like, what I've learned digging into it, watching it, being introduced to it, and then just reading about it is like, this is one of those shows that everybody who not like it has like a niche audience, but everybody who watches it is like, why isn't everybody watching this? This thing like deserves the biggest audience possible. And then you start watching, and you're like, oh yeah, this is really good. I'm gonna get right into I think the most pressing question I have, which is, I'll start with the cast. Like, there's so many mysteries that this story presents that are both big and small, like really small and really big. How cued in to all of these mysteries are you guys? And like, are you just learning things on sort of a need-to-know basis, or do you have a bigger picture knowledge?
I think the best person to answer that question is Catalina. How clued in are we, Kata?
Zero. Nothing whatsoever. This guy is
Tight-lipped.
Yeah.
And then you go to him and you're like, I have a question about this, and he's like, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Like that. Oh, okay. That's his answer for everything. So we learn what's happening to the characters while we read the scripts. Mm-hmm. So it's terrifying. Sometimes.
I used to ask questions as well and realize that there's nothing that's going to be given whatsoever. And people are always asking, like, like, what about the mystery, and what do you expect to happen and hope to happen, which are all nice things to think about and want to know and feel like you're clued in on. But in this show, I quickly came to the realization that it's better just to be like, what comes next?
It adds to your
What
performance.
comes next?
Yeah,
That's it. Just be
absolutely.
right there in the moment.
Yeah.
Totally
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah.
There it is. That's the next thing. Oh, that's the next thing.
Yeah.
Oh.
It's like real life. I have a lot of questions, but I'm not going to get answers, and it's just
Yeah, and right in the middle of thinking you're figuring it out, something sideswipes you.
Like, we want to know what you're going to ask next.
And
You're already afraid.
What's going on?
Some hard-hitting stuff, I'm going to tell you that.
for the record, it's not a role we enjoy. Everybody says it's like, oh, you must love having all the answers. It's like, no, I want to talk about it with everybody. I can't wait until the rest of the cast and the audience knows what's happening.
Well, I mean, Jeff and John, like this similar question, but sort of like on a more macro level, like, how do you decide how much to keep close to the vest? And when you're sort of mapping out a series like this, how strategic are you with, like, oh, we're going to feed the audience a breadcrumb here or a breadcrumb there, but this isn't coming to like season 5, or like how? I mean, you guys, do you have walls of like?
walls and walls.
Walls, and some of them imagined and some of them real.
And I'm having a deja vu right now. I think we've had this conversation.
Many times. The analogy that I always use is that the way to plan a really successful road trip is to know exactly where you're starting, know exactly where you're ending. You'll have, the 7 interstates you're going to take to get there, and you know where all the states are on the map. And that knowledge allows you to go off-road and explore and be surprised, because we often say that the day that we stop being surprised by the show, then the show will start to feel stale. So it's very important. Like, we have a plan. There has been a plan since the beginning, but to allow that to evolve and to allow that to be an organic process. And, when it comes to the actors, it was very important to tell Harold and Courtine, who plays Ellis, on day 1, look, Boyd shot his wife, because that's something that the characters are already living with, but the audience won't find out until episode 8. And so we very much delineate between, like, look, this is what you're already carrying that we're going to reveal, and then the stuff that the characters aren't living with, they won't live with until it's time.
Yeah. And then importantly, and we said this from the beginning, and we said this when we were selling the show, this show is not about the mystery. This show is about the characters living in a set of circumstances, the answers that the audience, we want to share or know, will come out along the way. It's not going to be a big payoff at the ending. I think the most interesting thing about this show is the answers to the mysteries are just going to fuel more journey and more complications for the characters. If this were only about what are the answers, either the audience is like, oh, that was really cool, moving on to the next, or else they're disappointed because the mystery didn't live up to the expectation. So really, if you care about their plights, the mysteries just service that along the way.
And to answer your original question, we are constantly like it's a very fluid process, like in terms of like when we're going to reveal what. And for example, what we ended last season with, you know, the cliffhanger with Tabitha, in the original plan for the show, that was going to come much later. You know, and we're like, oh, you know what? That'd be a lot of fun to slide up to here, because as Jeff said, it's like we often talk about the show. It's a character drama masquerading as a horror series.
Yeah.
And so, you know, just keeping that trail of breadcrumbs alive and rewarding, because it's threading the needle of like giving enough answers that the audience is satisfied and that the show is compelling, but not giving so many that we're getting ahead of ourselves. So it's a very organic process and very fluid process.
Yeah, it's about these characters, but it's also about so much more, right? Like when I first started watching it, you know, you always you look for sort of like, what is the show saying, you know, and what is it really about? And like, I'm not the smartest guy in the room, but like when I was watching, I was like, oh, this is just a metaphor for, not just, but this is a metaphor for people born in a small town who can't leave. Like they're just trapped in a, you know, that's stuck in the past, you know. But then I'm like, then as it moves along, you're like, no, this is about so much more. Yeah. What are the themes that you guys have sort of discovered that you didn't know right away going into this show? That you're like, oh no, we're actually saying we're starting to say this. We're starting to say this. What are the themes that you guys have latched onto in this series?
That's interesting. I remember looking at it just last year and thinking, oh, this is kind of like a pandemic allegory, right? Yeah. It's like all these things coming at you, the rules keep changing, you don't know what's real, what isn't real, there's a threat, it's psychological, but it's also physical, you know?
And we were shooting in 2021.
Yeah, we were shooting during the pandemic.
Yeah.
It took on a whole new meaning all of a sudden.
We couldn't get into Nova Scotia to shoot to begin with, so we had the opposite problem.
Yeah.
We couldn't get in, and then once we were in, we couldn't get out of Nova Scotia.
Basically, we were stuck in
We
Nova
were
Scotia.
stuck in Nova Scotia.
Wow.
Yeah.
But thank goodness we're all essential workers.
Yes, we're essential workers.
Yeah. And then you meet people from Nova Scotia, and they're like, "No, I would love to live somewhere else."
Nova Scotia is fabulous, though.
I'm sure it is.
It
I'm sure it is. No.
Yeah.
But the fact that you couldn't leave
couldn't
was
leave was
Yeah.
a little daunting.
yes.
But Eion said it earlier today. There's a fissure in Jim and Tabitha's relationship, and the question is, how do you go on when there's this broken thing at the center of your life? For these characters, one of the things I think that's the most attractive to me about the show is really the question of like, how do you choose to live every day given your set of circumstances, whatever they may be? And that the show explores that in many different ways.
And one of the things he was like when he said originally, we thought of it more like this pandemic thing. One of the things that kicks in for me a lot right now is like commitment to family. Like there's so many themes about commitment to family, like staying in the fight because you have no other choice but to fight, right? But staying in why you're staying in, and it really has started playing out like a big family drama for me personally.
Oh, yeah,
I just keep
for sure.
watching like how the relationships in the family keep changing. How I actually have a son, but another guy who's like my son, and a daughter who's over there, and you know what I mean, and a de facto kind of wife, but except I killed my other one. Anyway, be careful. You're not my wife, so you don't have to worry about it.
No, I don't worry about you at all. I know. He's gone on about this for 3 seasons now. It's like, I get it. You have a crush on me.
Now it's revealed.
It's gonna be okay, Brittany. It's gonna be okay. I'm still married to Cliff.
Who wouldn't have a crush on Donna? Come on. That's a great point. It ties into the end of season 2, like when you're talking about all being about family and the sort of conflicts that these characters are, specific conflicts that presents them. It's like she wakes up in that hospital and like wants to get back into that trap because she misses her family. Right. Like, who would want to go back there?
Right. And the why is she in the hospital is because of her family.
Yeah.
Like why she ended up in the hospital is because she wanted to save Julie.
Yeah.
So I totally agree with Harold. It's like everything is about family at the end.
One of the other interesting themes that Catalina talked about earlier was this idea of loss. And all the characters at some point experience deep loss. And whether you're losing your family, losing everything you have, your status, your identity, your mind. So when you strip all of that away from a person, what's left, and how do you rebuild yourself?
Yeah.
Right?
And that's one thing that struck me, similar to that, is that it dawned on me what if this is the town? My psyche, me. We're always creating roadblocks. We're always having mysterious monsters coming in. How do we move on within ourselves?
Yeah. So those things are really.
And I think one of the things that I find really fulfilling about the show is that the ability to explore like the fact that like this isn't real. Like our circumstances are transitional. What is real is this. Is the relationship and the love and the that you have and the interpersonal dynamics that you have with people. And in this place, that's all they have. And especially, in the times that we live in now, that's a really attractive thing to explore. Is that when you live inside a nightmare, you hold on to each other.
I keep thinking of the word resilience. Can you get up one more time than you've been knocked down? And as the seasons have gone on, I realize that is a real theme that I ponder with this show. Is everyone here in the story, every character, is just gets pummeled again and again and again. And to Jeff's point about how do you deal with it? What kind of character do you have as a human being? Can you just like keep getting up?
Yeah.
And then when you do stand up, how do you do it?
Yeah.
I think that long form storytelling, many of my favorite series, they're about family. And it's about found family. And we're here at Comic-Con, which is like the heart of tribal. If you belong to any tribe, you will find your people at Comic-Con. It's like I think it's what keeps pulling people back to shows like ours, because it's a reflection back of the choices we all make. How do we value our lives?
And I think also too, it was really important, even in the selling of the show, to convey like this is not a show about hopelessness. This is a show about people in the worst of circumstances finding a way not just to survive but to live. And I think that's what prevents it from being. I had one person early on in the process say, "Why wouldn't everyone who comes here just kill themselves?" It's like, wow, this might not be the show for you guys.
Because that would be the most depressing show ever made in the history of television.
And 2 episodes. Right, exactly. And the end. You never find out the mystery because everyone died. But it was a shocking reaction to me because it's like, because even under the worst circumstances, we find ways to live. We find ways to thrive. And to find ways to convey that in the show. Like one of my favorite scenes in the series is when Boyd and Kenny have a catch in season 1. Right. And it shows that even here we will find those moments.
Yeah. But you guys do love you use the word pummeling, and you guys love pummeling your characters. I will say, you guys get a particular joy out of the pummeling. It seems like
a very wise writer friend of mine one day said the best television is falling in love with characters and then watching them suffer.
Yeah. It's a writer's trick, right?
They call it bittersweet for a reason.
Yeah. What can you guys? Fans are gonna want to know. We want to keep the intrigue and the mystery, obviously. But what are you guys willing to tease about season 3?
I think it was either Elizabeth or Catalina that said it in one of the previous interviews. Is that you're going to get answers to questions, and other questions will become apparent. But I think that we never want to feel like we're moving sideways in the story. We are always moving forward, and you will really begin to see some of these threads come together this season.
Season 3, shit gets real.
Shit gets real. Is that the tagline?
That's the tag. It is now.
Yeah. Have you guys? I don't know if this is something you've made public, but do you have a master plan for number of seasons? Is that
yes? And no, we cannot tell you because it's up to powers higher than
Do you
that's
guys
above
know?
our pay grade.
Do you guys know?
No.
No, you're in the dark on that.
We don't know anything.
Where are we?